I am going to now go for a nice Friday relaxation, a sojourn into fiction. For Fiction Friday, let's go with our Outer Limits theme, go into my deep, deep love of fiction writing from my old script writing days and prose and stuff like that.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right. After the power of all those news stories, very, very intense stuff. And hopefully we presented all that information, a lot of information. I know that that happens on a big show like this every night. So hopefully it's a good place for you to gather. If you find 2 or 3 stories that are important to you, I feel like I've done something okay. And so as we head to the last week of July, I want to wish you all a wonderful summer. I hope if you have kids that are off from school, you're having a great time with your kids. And what was it W.C. Fields said when somebody asked him, don't you like children? He goes, of course I like children, if they're properly cooked. Sorry to think about the Epstein stuff now and all the crazy things they say about that. But tonight we're going to look at possibly a horror story, possibly a suspense story, possibly a mystery story. Last week, we read that great Roald Dahl story about the detection of where the wine came from, right? Now, we're going to go into one of the stories that we could have read but didn't read, and we might read 2 of them. I'm going to give you a couple options here, okay? So let's go over to our wonderful friend, the chalkboard, and talk about Fiction Friday. As last week, we read from this collection that included Ruth Rendell and Roald Dahl, Murder by the Glass, and was edited by Peter Haining, who's done a number of those. Peter Haining also has done some nonfiction books about Doctor Who, which have been pretty cool. And let's see, our options have been, last week we read A Connoisseur's Revenge. And this time we could read the opener of The Crypt by John Jakes. Remember we mentioned that one? Or we could read from this one, 8 Doors to Death, edited by Hans Stefan Stephenson. Has Anthony Boucher, has Thomas Flanagan, and this came out, what was it, the 60s? 1968. So this included a story in it that I thought we could read that you might enjoy, called Time Trammel by Miriam Allen DeFord. So, you want to go with Miriam Allen DeFord or John Jakes? And if it takes a little extra effort to type Miriam Allen DeFord inside Rumble, you let me know, but we'll get your votes. And it won't be the Bad Attitude Award. It'll be the Whom Would You Like to Hear? Ooh, Birdhouse has Frederick Pohl, The Midas Plague. Yes, in the Internet Archive. Thanks, man. So, do you want to hear the John Jakes story or do you want to hear Miriam? You let me know. And we might even be able to read both. Time Trammel or Trammeler in Time, or John Jakes, the opener of The Crypt. What do you think? You let me know, everybody. Put your votes in, and I might just even flip a coin. We'll see. Maybe one of those David Knight coins. Those are pretty cool. All right. Let's see if anybody comes up with any comments here. I'm going to go over to X as well and check out X. X. Remember that band X? Oh, and by the way, Saudi Arabia launched more strikes at Houthi-controlled Yemen, because there's nothing more wonderful than that. All right, we've got. Now we've got it bifurcated. We got John Jakes and Birdhouse is going with time travel. I'll tell you what. Let's read the time travel one first. It's a 6-pager, 10-point font, and we're going to go for it. All right, here we go. This is from Miriam Allen DeFord, Time Trammel. All right. And we're going to put up our little blackboard image, and here we go. Saturday, November 25th, 1967, 12:11 p.m. Dr. Ogden worriedly caressed his bald forehead as he watched. "You see, the door's fast," he said, "just the way the nurse reported it to me." Dr. Vance, bigger, huskier, and older, pounded hard with both hands. "Come on, Henry," he called. "Let us in. Don't you want your lunch?" There was no reply. The door hadn't budged under the pounding. "But surely he couldn't lock it?" Vance asked in a shocked tone. "Naturally not. We don't provide locked doors for paranoiacs, no matter how well they're doing. He's sealed it with something." "What?" "That's what we'll find out. Oh, here you are, Bert. I want you to break this door down. You got the axe? And first, tell the ward nurse to keep any stray patients away from here." It took half a dozen blows by the burly orderly before the thick door yielded. Fragments of something splintered off from all four edges. "Clay," said Ogden, picking up a piece. "He's been modeling in industrial therapy. Probably kept stealing little bits and putting them in his pocket till he had enough. He has water in his room to make it soft again." The door fell inward with a crash. "Okay, Henry," said Dr. Ogden, stepping over it. "What's this all about?" The room was empty. There was only the one door, and the iron bars on the one window were all in place. Dr. Vance tested each one deliberately to make sure none had been sawed through and reset. The three men looked at one another in incredulous dismay. "It's impossible," Ogden murmured at last. "He couldn't possibly get out." "But he isn't here." You needn't say it, Bert," said Vance. "And keep your lip buttoned up about this, here? Not a word to anyone, if you value your job." "I don't know the case, Doctor," he went on, as the orderly left. "What is it about this man?" "Henry Albrecht," said Ogden. The shock had got out of him, and he sat down on the bed, shaking, still, just a little. "Engineer, aged 32, been here 2 years, less a month. Diagnosis, paranoia with schizophrenic tendencies, violent when he first came, but he's been progressing steadily. Delusions? 2 main ones. He was going to invent a machine to travel through time, and he had signed a pact with the devil. Quite a combination. Contemporary science fiction and medieval superstition. Quite. At least, in his last interview with me, he recognized them both for what they are. Paranoiacs are clever dissemblers, as you know, but he had me convinced he was practically ready for discharge. And now, this. And where is he?" Dr. Vance laughed a little. "Has it occurred to you, Doctor, that if this man's delusions had really been true... Now, don't you crack up on me, Vance. I've got enough to worry about as it is." "I said if." "Well, Where is he? And how do we find him? And his nice, safe $100 a week. Saturday, November 25th, 1989, 12:14 p.m. 22 years later. I see you've managed it all right, said the tall, thin, saturnine gentleman in the black suit in Hamburg. Henry Albrecht smiled grimly. You took your time about it, he commented accusingly. I had that room insulated from 9 this morning, right after breakfast. You should have known you could rely on me. 10 years from now, it's 1989, by the way, you'll have invented your time machine. But right now, it had to be done by teleportation. And that's hard to fix. And now, how about confirming our little arrangement? Albrecht's eyebrows traveled up in surprise. What arrangement? He asked. The devil frowned. None of that now, Albrecht. You know better than to try to bluff me. If you want it in words of one syllable, you may recall that back in 1965, you and I had a little talk together. That time you accidentally spoke the incantation that summoned me. 8 words of more than one syllable in that statement, if you count 2 in 1965, said Henry imperturbably. The devil went on without listening to him. I told you then, you will remember, that your invention would be totally impossible until a man who was at that moment a junior in college had worked out a new mathematical synthesis. I told you that if you were willing to wait until I had time to attend to the matter, I could transport you to the date of his announcement, which was last week. Then you could go ahead and work on your machine, and 10 years from then, you'd have it completed. I even explained to you why you had to wait. I told you about the big backlog of cases I already had on hand, so that it would be 2 years at least before you could come in under the American quota. If you'd had the brains to wait quietly and keep your mouth shut, the whole thing would have gone through without difficulty. But no, you had to talk. So the natural consequence was that you found yourself in a mental hospital. And even then, I didn't forget you. The minute they gave you a private room so I could talk to you alone, you remember that I appeared and gave you your further instructions. I know all that, said Albrecht grudgingly, though I still don't see why I had to go through all that hocus-pocus about sealing the door. You are a very selfish man, Albrecht, scolded the devil. Did you want to be teleported here in full sight of all those other poor creatures who are really crazy and maybe set some of them back permanently so that they'd never recover? Besides, I've got another case coming up in that ward myself, and I didn't want him to get ideas that wouldn't apply to him. But why couldn't it have been done at night? And lose some poor nurse or orderly a job for having let you escape? This way they can't blame anybody. Oh, very well. Though it's been no picnic in that place, I can assure you. But thanks anyway, old man. And now I'll have to see about getting established and starting work again. Just a minute, my slippery friend. You've conveniently forgotten the most important part of our conversation in 1965. Are you going to pretend that I did all this for you just out of the kindness of my heart, which, incidentally, is non-existent? You signed a pact with me, remember? Did I? You know blessed well you did. With your blood, too. How anachronistic. But it is still binding. And what were the terms? You know them perfectly well. Don't think you can either cajole me or cheat me, young man. That just isn't done. I wouldn't dream of it, sir. But just to get the record straight, suppose you tell me again the terms of this alleged pact? The devil reached into the inside pocket of his coat. I have it right here, in red, rather rusty by now, red and white. Very well, I'll read it to you. He drew horn-rimmed glasses from a black case and adjusted them on his high, thin nose. I, Henry Albrecht, he began, then cleared his throat, hereinafter known as the party of the first part, do hereby make, constitute, and establish with his satanic majesty. You understand, he broke off to say, that I'm not his majesty, may he reign forever, himself. I'm only a deputy, but an important official, I can assure you, young man, a very important one indeed. He continued reading, hereinafter known as the party of the second part, the following agreement, contract, and pact. Within 2 years from date, the party of the second part undertakes to transport the party of the first part to a time when antecedents necessary for the invention of a time travel machine shall have come into existence. The party of the second part also undertakes to ensure that the party of the first part will succeed in such invention and that he will live in health, without injury, and insolvency during the period required for its accomplishment. In return, Albrecht, the party of the first part agrees to render to the party of the second part all right, property, and use in or of his soul, spirit, personality, or individuality, provided that such right, property, and use shall be taken or made not earlier than 1 day following successful completion of said time machine. The party of the first part further agrees that on accomplishment of his transportation into future time, at aforementioned, he will sign a codicil, testifying that the first provision of this contract has been accomplished as promised, and reaffirming his agreement to perform his own obligation at the time appointed. That's what you signed, Albrecht, and I have added the codicil to the document. Now give me your left wrist so I can draw the blood, and let's get the present formalities over with. So sorry, sir, said Henry Albrecht amiably. Thanks for everything and all that, but your contract isn't worth the asbestos it's written on. What? What? Why not? Sputtered the devil, his urbanity now gone. Why do you think I did babble a bit about the time machine and about my pact with you, for the express purpose of being certified as insane? If you'll look up my record at the hospital, you'll find 3 psychiatrists judged I was completely paranoid for at least 2 years prior to my commitment. An incompetent can't be held to a contract anywhere in the United States where this was signed. To be sure, I could be held to it if I were to recover, but now you've removed me from the whole time period when I was judged insane. So my record of incompetence can never be reversed. Too bad, old chap. That's the way it is. I'll have you re-examined here and cleared. You can't. That would violate the term of the contract by which you guaranteed my health. that includes mental health as well as physical. To examine me, even if I were cleared, would imply that there was a question as to my health. Otherwise, I wouldn't be needing an examination. Then I'll send you back there, choked the devil furiously. Oh, but you can't do that either. That would invalidate the promises made in the pact, and hence invalidate the pact itself. I will get you yet, growled the devil, emitting sparks all around. Henry Albrecht grinned. Remember Lawrence Stern? He inquired conversationally. I imagine you've got him down there in your place. Next time you see him, tell him we're still quoting Tristram Shandy up here. Like this. Go, poor devil, get thee gone. With a stench ablaze and an angry roar, he went. That, The Time Trammel, from 1967, written by Miriam Ellen DeFord. Now, let me see if I can find out any information about Miriam Ellen DeFord. I'll try fantastic fiction just for the heck of it. I doubt that they will have information on Miriam Ellen DeFord, but it's possible, okay? So we'll head on over here. Miriam. Oh, there it is. Miriam Allen DeFord. Okay, great. Miriam Allen DeFord. There's really no background information, but they have a citation of fantastic fiction collections. So these are collections of, now when they have collections, these are not anthologies that include just one story. These are collections by the author. All the stories are supposed to be by the author when it's under collections. Sometimes things fall through the cracks, but let's look at The Theme is Murder from 1967. Oh, this must be very hard to find. They usually list Abe Books or Amazon. We've not found any editions of this book on Amazon. Of course, Abe is for used books, but it's owned by Amazon now. Xenogenesis. This one's got a cool picture. Tales of Space and Time. $4.99. Anybody wants to buy it? Looks like it was released by maybe Ballantine Books. Wow, that's pretty neat. Let's head on over to Amazon and check it out. Collections of stories. So this is, yep, including The Daughter of the Tree, The Superior Sex, The Adjeri Diary, Quick to Haste, The Smiling Future, Got Thee, The Children, Throwback, One Way Journey, The Season of the Babies, Featherbed and Schlintha, The Transit to Venus, All in Good Time, The Absolute Perfect Murder, Operation Cassandra. That sounds interesting. The Last Generation. DeFord was born in 1888 and died in 1975, was an American science fiction and mystery writer. So, very interesting. Very interesting stuff. Xenogenesis. That's a great title for a book. Then Elsewhere, Elsewhen, and Elsehow. And I'm going to do a little AI stuff and see if I can get any further information. So I'm going to go over here real quick and see if I can get any further information. What do I use? I'll go to Grok. Super Grok. Tell me about this author. Let's see. All right. It is thinking about my request, this computer that draws from all sorts of stuff. Miriam Allen DeFord. And let's see, a science fiction database, Goodreads, and what other little items do we have here? Very interesting. 1888 to 1975. Final bit for this. Let's check it and see. All right, still searching. Okay, here we go. This is what it says. Born in Philadelphia, she studied at Wesley College, Temple University, and the University of Pennsylvania. She worked as a newspaper reporter and described herself as a born feminist. She was active in the women's suffrage movement before 1920, campaigned for and disseminated birth control information, and belonged to the Socialist Party of America from 1919 to 1922. In the 1920s, she contributed to left-wing publications, including The Masses, The Liberator, and the Federated Press Bulletin. She later served as the San Francisco correspondent for the Socialist Federated Press. Oh, wow. She worked with the Federal Writers Project in the 1930s, producing the book They Were San Franciscans. So she got on the government dole for a while. That's socialist. And she was a passionate Fordian, who conducted field work for Charles Fort. Interesting. And contributed to The Humanist. So she was probably an atheist. She married Amistad Collier in 1915, divorced in 1920, and then the nonfiction writer Maynard Shipley in 1921, and he died in 1934. She lived for many years in San Fran and died there at the age of 86 at the Ambassador Hotel. She wrote true crime works. She wrote a lot in journalism, of course, and she won the 1961 Edgar Award from the Mystery Writers of America for Best Fact Crime Book, a book called The Real Bonnie and Clyde. Interesting. So, there you go. All right. Now, to close things off, let's go to the latest on Transmitter. And you can let me know what you thought of that story. And we'll check that out for all y'all, as the Beastie Boys would say. And then we'll read the John Jakes one midweek this coming week. How about that? Sound good? All right, here we go. We've got Henry Albrecht. Brilliant, my boy. Yes, pretty cool. I thought he was gonna say that his suffering in the mental institution meant that he was not well treated and wasn't taken care of. That's what I thought was going to be his carve out. I wonder if any of you thought that. I shouldn't say I bet you thought that, but I wonder if you did. Interesting. All right, let's head on back over into Fiction Friday and talk about Transmitter, the story that is very close to about 2/3 of the way done. And we'll call that up on the Word program. Hopefully it won't be something that clogs things down too much on the CPU. Had a lot of problems with that today while I was trying to edit video. Had to clear a bunch of stuff out. So here we go. This is going to be the story. Transmitter. All right. Think she'll be watching? White House? Hebert leaned out the van window and into spectral mist, turning away from the side view to yell over the throaty growl of the generator. Nah, not that old. You know, you can see it on the screen. C word. Nah, not that old, caller witch. I mean Ash. Barton swung the massive camera case from the back and laid it beside the pod. Who cares? I gave her up like a bad habit weeks ago. Then he lifted both and gorilla walked the burdens to beside Hebe, tilting his head westward in the direction of the old Georgian on the glistening, overgrown hill. Too bad for her. This is just her kind of place. The mix of engine exhaust and fecund autumnal rot blended with the cold and wet, but Hebert kept his sleeves rolled up and exposed his tattooed elbow as he surveyed the derelict display. She must have been a right masochist if you think she'd like taking on that kind of fixer-upper. Barton smiled, wiped his jet-black cowlick off his damp and pallid brow. Nah, just her gothic thing. That's what brought us together. Typical effed-up bird. Got into all this occult shit and seance nonsense in her teens and thought I'd love it too because of all our shows. She stuck with it for a few months until she realized none of this was real for us except the bank deposits. Hebe nodded and reached for his half-smoked pack, popped one out and handed it to Barton before taking one for himself and pressing the lighter into the dash. Thanks, man. Barton's voice came to him as he took the red-hot burner and touched it to the fag. Then he handed the still potent coil on its handle back to Hebe, and they both took long drags of the mentholate and the relative calm. Don't know why we didn't just shoot pre-roll last week when we got inside. The way they set up this production, there's no need to lug all that shite into the house and up those effing stairs if we're going to pretend the visuals are lost a few minutes in. Barton's cigarette sizzled in the mist as he sucked in a great breath of the burning, bound leaves. Did you mention that to Malcolm? Sure as hell did. They could be getting shots of the rats and trash round London instead of having you set up the rig for the establishing live feed before the proverbial lights go dark. The rest is just audio, our effects, and your little play-by-play. Barton dragged air through the leaves, withdrew the cigarette, and sneered at its orange tip. He tell you anything about the plan, then? I don't know what you mean. There's a reason we can't go to tape tonight, man, said Barton, his voice filling with that velvety, self-confident tone usually reserved for broadcasts. Hebert squinted at him, half smiled, raising his brows in an expression of amused curiosity, as if to coax out more. 'Cause tonight's little play-by-play isn't going to go by the plan we gave the Beeb. Really? Now Hebert did smile, and his dark eyes, still sharp and full of inexhaustible 20-something rebellion, seemed to grow bright in the gathering gloom. Mm-hmm. Barton sucked in more smoke, blew it skyward as if he were a steam engine, and began his satisfied-sounding reply. I figured if this might be our last show, thanks to Holy Thighs Mary and her White House protest patrol, then we make this one for the history books. And by the way, if you're not familiar, Mary Whitehouse was a figure in the 70s in England who was all about curtailing violence and spooky stuff from TV shows like Doctor Who. She made quite a name for herself. So I figured if this might be our last show, thanks to Holy Thighs Mary and her White House protest patrol, then we make this one for the history books. Oh, I like that, brother. Yeah. If she and her knickers-bunched bitch brigade are so close to shutting us down because they say our ghost patrols are immoral or irreligious or scandalous or who knows what shite they've come up with today, then the script I handed the high-ups back in London won't be what goes out tonight. No effing way. Seriously? Seriously. Well, what about the delay? If you start blasting truth bombs live in an hour, you know they'll switch out the feed and claim technical difficulties. Again, Barton took a long drag. This time he held it a lot longer and spoke as the smoke glided out his nostrils, as if the breath of a smug ready to strike dragon. Not if I paid off Merritt, too. He cocked his head and grinned at Hebert, to suddenly need to hit the head and leave the control room locked while he's away. Nice idea, Hebert observed. That'll only buy you a few minutes. A few's all I need. But I'll have more than that anyhow. Even if they find the right keys to get inside, they need a union man to do the switching, or else they'll run the risk of a labor contract suit first thing Monday morning. Hebert nodded. Oh, this is going to be good. And after the show, as the Bible thumpers blow up the country, what's in the cards then? Then I disappear for a while. I take off for a few days so I can't be asked any damn stupid questions. You're in the clear, and the show burns out bigger than anything in years. Hebert mulled it over. And the choice of locale? His friend added, directing his thumb back over his shoulder. Yes, it's intentional. Its history bolsters the message. You'll see what I mean. All right, mate. If this looked to be the final show and it's the way you want to go out across what's left of Rue Britannica, I'm all for it. F 'em and leave the sticks up their arses. The co-workers went silent, and the mist thickened into small, bashful drops. After more times savoring drags, Hebe chucked his stub into a puddle beside the right front tire, seeing it sizzle, bob, and float to the surface. Want a hand? He nodded at the gear. Barton still had some fag to go. He withdrew his smoke and pulled a Sisyphean half-smile as he looked at the burden. Nah, you did the heavy work running that damn triax from the 3rd floor. Along the wet, leaf-littered, moss-split stone walk that passed through the iron gate, through the eons, and towards the granite stairs and overgrown front hill, a thick black line of insulated cable stretched like an enormous, dormant worm. They regarded it, a modern dragon of copper and rubber, carrying the fire of electricity to the camera and mic when needed, and returning the electrons when the shoot began. Wouldn't it be great if we could run the CCU off a SEP cam signal and XLR through the air, instead of expensive line and relay EQs when the distance to the van reaches its limit? Hebert asked. Barton tilted his head, and his nearly black orbits traced the glistening line away from the van, up the hill. You mean like localized RF transmission from the cam to the van? Yeah. That'd take a hell of a lot of bandwidth, man. Good point. Barton tossed his coffin nail filter and grabbed the equipment. Still not a bad idea. Maybe someday, Hebe. Keep applying that wizard mind. Then we'll trash all this shite and the rubbish workers can handle it after they end this strike next century. Hebert gave him a smile and a thumbs up. Barton lifted the heavy loot and half turned to speak. I'll be as quick as I can. Just watch for the signal, and we'll talk over the phones and mic. Sure thing, mate. And with a smile and a momentary grimace as he shifted the burden, the slender man stepped beneath the arched ironwork with its large W at the apex, through the half-open gate, and into the yard. 25 minutes passed before Barton had the cam on the pod and the lights properly adjusted. Give us white balance when you can, Hebert told him through the headset. The little van hummed with the vibe of the generator and stank of acrid fumes. Will do. Barton's voice was strong in his ear. A horizontal shadow of him slid across the screen, projected by one of the lights that poured through a large rectangle, presumably the doorway, and falling on a chintzy, moth-chewed, stained oval of what once might have been a rather expensive braided rug. Without white balance, everything on his monitor screen had a kind of bluish tone, as if the whole place had been painted the color of a stillborn child. But in a moment, Barton laid down the white balance plate and zoomed in, pressing the proper key on the camera to focus and lock the tone. Then he zoomed out, and, like a first-time sailor recovering from a storm, the carpet took on a healthy glow. The bedroom around it adopted ruddy hues of brown, russet, alabaster, ivory, and brass, and the immense bed offered more detail, dominating the right side of the screen like some kind of fabled ocean liner rising from the brine wine floor, from the dark shadows beneath the aged yellow cover to the four-post canopy that hovered in a state of gauzy, eroded diffusion many feet above. Hebe sensed practiced professionalism as Barton fixed the focus, pulled back, and left the camera where it would remain staring at him during the start of the show, before utterly going black for tonight's ghostly spectacle. Did you ever read The Silent World by Jacques Cousteau, Barton? He asked into the headset mic. His partner stepped into view, holding his microphone in one hand and pressing his hearing piece into his ear with the other. No, though I've heard it's fascinating. Why do you ask? Well, there's a lot in there about his efforts during the early days of the aqualung, the air tank tech, and so on, when the germs occupied France. Lots of trial and error and risks, as he and his buddy, Dumas, I think was his surname, flouted the Nazi orders and swam around when and where they weren't allowed. Adventurers, eh? Well, it wasn't full-on fighting, but they resisted in any small way they could. Cousteau and that Dumas bloke initially tried using spears. to fish deep in a couple bays without being detected, but they realized it took more energy to catch the fish than they were getting back from the fish, so they gave that up. But the reason I mention is because sitting here with the stench of the generator got me remembering that there was this one time when Cousteau was on his own in a wreck off the coast of Greece, using a track line as he went deeper into its crumbling structure. And he began to get confused and tired and dizzy. He was effed, but was lucky enough to have the line and the mental strength to focus on it, to draw himself back. When he got to the surface, he was barely conscious, and they dragged him on deck as if he were a dead fish himself. He slowly recovered, and then they realized they'd filled the tanks near the exhaust pipe for the actual compressor, and the gas he was breathing was largely carbon monoxide. Holy shite. Yeah, I sometimes think about that when I'm at a job and the generator's upwind. Not that it worries me, it just jogs the old gray cells I have left. It's a good book if you can get it. I'll look for it. I got a little more time now, with the starlit girl in my rear view. Hey, speaking of gray, are you setting a white balance? Yep. Great. I got a half hour before we count down. Gonna take a leak outside, then I'll be back for the list. Righto. Hebe got to work on the uplink, opening the signal to and from London, double-checking with Merritt on the satellite window for transmission, then ran the van radio and savored the glorious reports of a volcanic summer that finally had ended, even as its ash continued to collect on the sidewalks and stoops of the tired old city. There should have been a promo for Ghost Walk with Barton Trask wedged into the reports, pointing like a big index finger to BBC4 telly and reminding people to ready bunkers behind the sofa. But no commercial sounded, leaving Hebert with that empty feeling he occasionally got when a broadcast he was going to handle got no push, no confirmation. And sans that sense of near validation, he did not know anyone would be watching. He and Barton, in essence, could be doing a pantomime, entertaining only each other. "What's the word, Watson?" came Barton's voice, and Hebe turned back to the main feed's screen, where Barton had reappeared and was walking with the microphone towards the bed. "I see you chose the luxury suite. More like a prison. I'm all locked in, mate. Think anyone will recognize the property and try to gate crash while you're live? Don't know about here, but there was that one circus when Finity filled in for you. Everybody wants to be a star." "Okay." Hebert glanced at the digital clock on the minibank. "We got 28 minutes. Now, lights out at 9 in. Right. And from the opening titles, we roll B over low sought and you on mic. 20 seconds on that, then throw it to me here. Did I jot that right on the grid?" Hebert scanned the top of the schedule and shot list clipped to the bank. Yeah, looks good, but I know. Given what we discussed, timing's gonna be fluid tonight. Just roll with me as best you can, mate." Hebert felt his torso growing tense and drew a long, dank breath to calm down. "Steady as she goes, Barton." Then he saw the host pull back the old film of a bed cover and sat, placing the mic in his left hand and withdrawing a small handheld tape recorder from his dark tuxedo jacket. He pressed one of a few buttons along one edge and held the mic a few inches away. "Sound effects, set 1, cassette 1, came Barton's slightly tinny voice from the device. Then there was a dull thud, as of a heavy sack of dirt dropped on a wood floor, and another. He stopped the player, looked up, and offered a questioning expression. "Sounds good, Barton." The host nodded, slid the player into his jacket pocket, and his eyes seemed to snag on something just to his left. He squinted, returned the mic to his right hand, and leaned left towards an old oil lamp on a small, simple, ash-painted bedstand. "Looks like they forgot something," he said. and the tip of his left middle finger tapped a silvery crucifix, perhaps 2 inches long and 1 inch wide, attached to a thick metallic chain that had encircled the undecorated glass flute of the lamp. "Vampires!" quipped Hebert. Barton appeared to reassess the room, looking around him, then up, towards the ceiling that Hebert could not see. "Or a deathbed." He again regarded the cross, lifted it off, and held it out at arm's length. "I wonder if at least some of the stories about this place are true." The crucifix swung and twirled very slowly, glinting bright, flashing bits of the artificial light, and making the bleak background appear even darker than before. He let it move in this manner until it stopped and seemed to face him, like a challenger in an arena. Then, as if snapping out of a trance, he dropped the necklace to the floor. "Hey, mate, if you don't want it, bring it here when we close. Might fetch me a few quid." "It's yours, Hebe." "Thanks, man." He checked the signal. "We're good to go." "Right. After I've run through the pad opening, I'll cut the lights." "I'll black out the feed as planned." "Right. From there, you'll have to tag along with me, and just keep broadcasting as long as you can." "You got it." Barton glanced at the big timepiece wrapped around his wrist, then pointed at the camera. "I know you didn't get a ticket for this ride, so I hope I've given you enough space to keep your job." "We're good, mate." "This is going to be wicked. Maybe we'll write a book about how we fought the gatekeepers of morality and sell it on the morning chat shows." "You're on, my friend." "Right, get ready." Jesus! That cheesy theme music. Mock theremin from over-compressed synth. Badly timed bass hits like farts. Insults lingering in the ears with the oral stench of sulfuric marsh bubbles. Sonic pustules popping without grace. If his requests had yielded 0 changes in 4 years, at least the end of the series would stop that nauseous electronic vomit from erupting across the sceptered aisle. 20 seconds, he told Barton, and the man nodded in the monitor. In a smaller screen, Hebert could see the black and white recreation of the network output, the wipes and dissolves, the whiteout transitions from lame zooms of ancient news headlines to Gothic cathedrals thrown into negative to oversaturated footage of actors in hard grease paint and horns, graveyards, empty gallows, the sonorous voiceover laid down with slight echo, "Unsolved murders." The sepia Jack the Ripper sketches, creeping, sliding, and slowly turning, laying over rain-soaked East End tenement facades and dollies beneath evocative gaslights. Legends and ghouls. The bad, slightly transparent shot of the veiled woman moving through Coventry's cemetery gate. Cults, criminals, and the occult. A pentagram in white on black, almost comical. Hauntings. The final image, one of the big old Victorians they'd visited in season 1. Cloud-crowded, full moon night. A single second-floor light coming on to demand attention. "You're recruited. Welcome to the Ghost Patrol." The theme struck its almost comical electric crescendo, a dissonant keyboard strike that could put Dr. Phibes to shame, and ran the final seconds of the wave decay. "Ready," Hubert said into his headset. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He punched the switcher, opened the mic, and put Barton's camera on screen. "Welcome, searchers." The celebrity's voice was strong as ever, bell-resonant, his eyes and brows cast as if from iron. This was the face of the man most of the teletuned England knew was one of the most serious about his subject, a man who did not muck about. He sat on the bed, in the only shot their shoestring budget offered, the medium he had set up, with the bed, the nightstand, and the posts rising to the unseen ceiling. we gather once more to explore the strange, the unholy, the bizarre. Hebert hit the chyron. Barton Hughes, host, searcher. To open the window, pull back the veil, and see that there is more to the material world than mere matter. Graphics off. Welcome once more to a 60-minute live dive into the unknown and hidden, the shadows in our own backyards. Tonight, I join you from the bedroom of a man who, in his era at the turn of the century, enjoyed wealth and high esteem, a man who, in the modern era, has been revealed to be a blight on history, a powerful, arrogant agent of the state who leveraged his position as a purported healer to torture and kill hundreds, to see them suffer, and carry out policies that merged science, medicine, experimentation, torture, and possibly dark rites, installing prison bars on what people were told were homes of mercy and healing. This is the sleep chamber of a beast who brought cold, heartless, experimental hell to health sanctuaries and got away with it. Hebert spoke into the mic, knowing his voice was traveling into the small, wired earpiece Barton wore on his left side, which was slightly turned away from sight. Graphics page in 3, 2, 1. The wipe. Graphics. Undisclosed location slid across the lower third of the screen, and Hebert brought up the title card to fill the background with the classic logo of the series. The silhouetted house, the moon above, the mist, and misty, opalescent words. They let Barton match them with his practiced style. We come to you as the spirits come for you, from an undisclosed location just northwest of London, although this place originally existed southwest of London and now sits atop a mysterious hill surrounded by dense forest, as if a lumbering giant, driven to anger, had decided to move and terrorize a new region of rural England. Hebert readied his fingers on the control panel, calmly speaking into the headset mic. Static B in 3, 2, 1. He pressed the switcher, replacing the image and graphics with a recorded pan of an old sepia-tone photograph, a tall, turreted, and multi-gabled stone facility rising above an imposing brick and iron wall. Clearly human housing, the facility stepped forward, rose from a time-faded era, and a locale that brooded, muscular, unassailable, befitting the dark, terrible themes of the program. This was Colney Hill Lunatic Asylum, later known as Frayern Hospital, circa World War I, a so-called sanctuary during a time of needless slaughter, a rising tide of life-changing hardship, of crippling injuries, shell shock, desperation, and madness. Another image of the facility taken from inside the gates, the gravel drive curving away like a bleached wishbone, splitting in two, with the right headed to the main building and its jagged, sky-scratching towers, and the left leading to a second structure. One not as large, but brick and stone, square, and forbidding as the storm clouds above. And this was the warden's abode, his mighty, massive house, where he admitted and decided the fates of damaged young men by the thousands, purportedly to heal their broken bodies and broken minds. But the horrors of the Western Front swirled in this man's heart, and when wide-eyed, stricken vets were wheeled through his gates of brick and iron, they were to be his to control, his toys. For Colney Hill Asylum was not a place of healing. Additional photos, interiors of stone cells, shocking, black on white within porcelain surgeries, smears on walls, operating tables fitted with restraints that radiated lust for another victim. It was a madhouse of institutional betrayal, brutal, sadistic, inhuman treatment, and endless horror. Colney Hill was hell, and a playpen for one man's utopian experiments. A long, prison-like corridor, light at the far end of the semi-darkness, appearing subterranean. A nightmare retold, all for the so-called greater good. Two-tone, an image of a mostly bald, long-bearded fat man sitting for his official, prideful photo. Wool topcoat, bespoke vest, white, crisp-necked shirt, bow tie, and floating above, piercing, overly bright, starshine eyes. Strangely sparkling, looking into the future with odd intent, they seemed almost not a part of the photo, as if superimposed by some preternatural force. And each fragment of the presentation married the next, uniting with the glow of Barton's sonorous voice. More black and white images ran through pans and zooms, slow pullbacks, and subtle dissolves. The immense stone building rose once more. Horse-drawn medical wagons sat before it. Distant images of white-clad nurses shone like phantoms along the front steps, all as Barton continued. Officially, the Crown delivered an estimated 4,000 wounded soldiers to this mirage of medical miracles. Unofficially, the custodial count was higher, but we may never discover how high, for once inside, the flesh, blood, bones, and minds of these men were the wards of warlocks. Headed by the chief wizard, Dr. Charles Dexter, the warden, who for decades was considered a hero who saved dozens when the asylum mysteriously burned to ashes in 1920. Newspaper headlines screaming above the fold, pictures of billowing titanic black clouds, bright demon eyes of fire amidst the smoke, long arcs of water from early fire hoses held by long-coated figures near tank wagons. Such effort, so much strife. Poor patients laid out on the lawn in a chaotic display like shattered piano keys tossed near the drive. Photojournalists had been there, and yes, their cohorts, excited writers all, scribbled thousands of hoary words, printed for millions of hungry eyes, words about the courage of great Dr. Dexter, who risked his life to race into the building, the burning portions of the facility, to unlock doors and help men out of doom's grasp, to lead them to safety and return again and again to the inferno. Cut to Barton holding his mic, utterly in control, ready to demolish a myth. But what if the official narrative were just that? A fantasy, concocted to hide evidence of horrific crimes. What if the accidental fire was not accidental at all, and had been planned and set to complete a monumentally evil plot, carried out by a cabal of powerful British leaders, moneyed men, scientists, and their occult brethren? What if the warden had been in charge of experiments so ghastly, so horrific? All traces of the test subjects had to be destroyed, while the warden used the opportunity to frame himself a hero, saving those who were not victims of the rituals, those who could be allowed to be seen and used to feather his proverbial bed of heroism. Hebert cut to photos of the warden visiting men in a new setting, a large medical hall filled with beds that were filled with people. A photo of Dexter standing in the middle of the hall, sometime during a bright day, backed by 5 nurses, all in a row. A picture epitomizing care. A picture for mass consumption. Labeled a hero, celebrated and showered with praise and wealth, Dexter washed himself of the ashes and death. He closed that chapter of his life. back to Barton by moving away from the burned wreckage of the slaughterhouse and coming here to this sheltered area outside the city. The host's eyes hardened, brow furrowed. But what if Dexter's arrogance were so vast? He tempted fate and God himself by using a small portion of his lucre to have every brick and stone, every panel and hinge of his former lodgings at the facility dismantled and moved to this new locale. Hebert nodded. This was going well, and he watched, feeling the rhythm of it all, as Barton very slightly leaned towards the camera. And what if these stones and bricks not only could talk, but they took something with them? What if they acted as a conduit for the limitless evil Dexter and his acolytes had tapped? Hebert made a quick decision, brought on screen the silhouette of the current location, the clouds, the dark, towering monster of the mansion. What if he could not escape? Back to Barton. We are here within those walls that Dexter brought with him, and tonight we will immerse ourselves in this cold, horrific atmosphere to open a new lane of communication, to possibly touch the evil he invited into this realm. Hebert paused, took a long, tension-ramping breath as his gaze slid around the room. Then his eyes, it should be Barton. Barton paused, took a long, tension-ramping breath as his gaze slid around the room. Then his eyes seemed to fix on something, and as if inspired by what only he could see, he said, "Our prior spectral ministrations on Ghost Patrol have dealt with making contact through seances, through nights spent in locked rooms, hoping to connect with the spirits that might be present." He looked at the camera. "But though we are locked inside, we are not attempting to contact haunters from the dark. We do not plan in any way to meet the spirits of his victims, the put upon and wronged. No. What purportedly came here with Warden Dexter was something else, something worse. A towering and malevolent force, previously unseen and unheard in our realm, a mind that responded to Dexter's invitation, the invitation created by his experiments." He cocked his head as he seemed to consider, then offered, "Is this force here? Was it ever here? And what exactly did Dexter do in the asylum that made his human victims and his transformative, transgressive experiments part of something so horrific? Even the upper echelons of British government and the darkest corridors of its secret societies dare not speak of the rituals and results." Hebert glanced at the clock. Time for network ID and promotions. Going to break in 10, 9. When we return, we will look at these and many other dark secrets hidden for decades by your own government. Stay with us, Ghost Patrollers. The switcher, a quick fade, and London took over, spreading its cheery news about the next mass consumables in the televisual trough. "We're clear, mate." "Great." Hebert watched his friend in the monitor. His complexion seemed to have paled in the glare of the lights, and before that bleak, ocean-black background. "This place gives me the creeps," Hebert let out. Then he seemed to restore some sense of cynicism and pressed the earpiece deeper into its flesh fitting. "This is a 4 now, right?" "Yeah, we moved the long break up. The second will be our short, then the half-past long break." "Okay. Wish I'd brought one of those smokes." Hebert swiveled on the stool and reached for the pack. "Oh, don't tell me." his old mate said. "You're getting one." "Sorry, comrade." He pressed the lighter into the dash. 3 minutes. Bastard. He smiled and watched the circle of the lighter's fitting quickly grow orange, then red, pulled it out, and brought it to the fag in his lips. The lighter made the tobacco sizzle. He pulled a drag, and something slammed on the side of the van. Fuck! He dropped the lighter and felt it hit his heavy work boot, heard it clang on the metal floor. Shit! Shit! It caught on one of the empty crisp bags littering the bellows, and he kicked it away, stamping on the tiny lick of grease fire. Then he heard the laughter. The windows were dark, the forest past twilight, drowned and dripping in a sepulchral atmosphere of almost night. A time when it was impossible to make clear distinctions, get a sense of near and far, or be certain something wild and nasty was not hiding just beyond the weeds. Something just beyond the doors. He let the lighter cool where he had kicked it and held the fag as he held his breath to listen. Something made the wet gravel and dirt clatter ever so softly on the driver's side, not far back from the window. Then it stopped. Another massive bang, this on the door, and more laughter. And then the dark crown of a head rose just above the window line. "Hey, handsome." Hebert shifted, sat in the driver's seat as she opened the door. "Ash?" In his ear, Hebert's voice blew a tiny, tinny note. "What was that, mate?" The play danced in her darkling eyes, and her smile seemed painted against her alabaster skin. She pointed at the mic attached to the headphones, and Hebert took them off, turning down his volume as he rested the getup on the angled display behind him. Then she climbed in, smelling of fresh air in the damp, and her feline breath carried that familiar minty scent when she kissed him. Hebert found the sensation as playful and intoxicating as their first clandestine kiss, round back of the hog's breath, when Barton had gone to fetch the car. He instantly savored the plump coolness of her slick lips and pulled her atop his lap, enjoying the soft press of her curves on his thighs. "Surprise!" she whispered, and nuzzled her nose into his ear. "Babe!" he quietly offered, soaking up her lovely cheekbones and amazing mascara-adorned eyes, where the green still glinted beneath lashes ever so long. Her smile he adored, her black hair gleaming in its bob cut he could not cease to admire. What the dodge are you doing here?" She turned sideways on his lap, her muddy feet pumping slightly outside the open door as she got better balance and brandished her right arm around his neck. Then she shifted her eyes back and forth as if she were searching and worried of potential witnesses. "I came to give Mr. B a taste of his own medicine," she said, breathy and close to his other ear. "Wait, what?" An expectant and delightful expression, another long, languid kiss. "Wish me luck." Then she swung her feet up and levered herself off him, planting her boots back into the muck of the damp and rutted lane. "Shan't take long," she said. "I figure if he's going to mock the mysteries, let's give him some real scares to contemplate." She pulled a small flashlight from within her black satin jacket. "Ta!" And flicking it on, she raced ahead, through the gate, and onto the spectral property that hosted the brooding, evil mansion. Despite her childish playfulness, the sense memory of her touch and the gravitational pull of her body held him as her dark outline blended with the night, then disappeared in starker definition against the tiny flashlight cast she threw into the tangle. Hebert felt the pang of parting and the surging urge to see her again. Something buzzed to his left. He shut the door and turned in the seat to pinpoint the source and return to reality. The headset, the earphones. Barton was calling. He checked the clock. 45 seconds. "Shit!" he whispered, grabbing the set and sliding it on. "Ready, man? Are we ready?" "Ready." "Where were you?" "I had to tap the keg." "What was that noise? I thought I heard something." Barton didn't appear concerned, just mildly curious. He spoke into his mic as he rechecked something inside his jacket pocket. Old pro. He was chatting to fill the downtime. Most of the work of on-site personalities during live shoots was boring, the labor composed of keeping mentally alert during the breaks. Nothing here, man. Maybe a bird or something. Yeah, a bird. I've got my foot on the light switch. You set for the black on my move? Set, mate. Coming back in 30. Barton tugged his tux jacket and resettled his rump on the tail to pull it tight against his chest. He cleared his throat. Music! 10! Hebert could see the network feed, the glowing block letters for BBC4. Then it was his time, and he brought up the show title and sounder designed to signal the audience they were back. Playback in 3. He counted to 0 and punched in the pre-recorded material to open their second segment, knowing they soon would discard all the signaled plans that the office heads in London had approved. The silhouetted figure of a man sat against a partially lit curtain, clearly in shadows to hide his identity. When he spoke, his voice, too, was affected to mask the real sound. People don't understand that even the so-called revelations about Dr. Dexter were a smokescreen. The government does this, releasing dark information, even criminal histories, to deflect attention, to satisfy the curious and convince them that they have all the information they seek. A new angle, closer. The voice was low, warbling, almost like the voice of some kind of demon from a horror film. So the Times releases an expose, replete with the shocking news that Dexter's life was not as it seemed, but that allows them to deep six the worst. In most public venues, the press, anyone allowed to gain access to the leveraging information, is left completely unaware that they haven't got the whole picture. Hebert spoke into the headset. 3, 2, 1. He switched to Barton, live on cam again. Dexter, no, not a hero. He was thoroughly, completely a flesh and blood villain. A flash of British wickedness and sadism like few others. He paused for effect. Experiments, yes. The world of officialdom now will admit to his cutting and use of chemicals and serums, his exploitation of the damaged, to damage them even more. But there is another dimension to what he did behind those bricks and bars and tiles and curtains. A dimension that goes deeper, like a seething black gravity well. As we said earlier, the stories of his heroism were the event horizon, the perimeter. False stories of heroism, they were the cheap assays and flim-flam cooked up in MI5 and the Home Offices and lesser-known, perhaps unknown bureaus. Narratives woven to project a silver screen image. Then, as days and months and years passed and key figures came and went, the tethers loosened, and the curious became confused and more curious. Why did many death records not comport with the physical evidence of the victims in that fire? Why were the prior months of food orders far too low for a facility supposedly healing that many people? Why were the grounds restricted and then raised, even more completely than the wards themselves? Good, good. Hebert gauged the coming change, could feel it approaching, like the killer in Poe's Telltale Heart. The flim-flam men and women went to work, knowing that they had to give the digging dogs something to chew, and then tell them that was the entire, actually half-baked meal. Barton stared, eyes somehow gripping with their own great gravity. They did not want people to know the whole story, because that story touches on aspects of the supernatural that might get people thinking about more than the material world, more than just so-called happiness and entertainment, the next draft and cheap one-night stands. If Dexter's exploits in any way were shown to hint at something beyond the veil, and that hinted at each of us having an eternal soul, if it whispered that true metaphysical good and evil existed and our fates hinged on our respect for God, that there was an eternal struggle? No, we couldn't have that. So Dexter had to be revealed to be a sadist madman who got a thrill out of torture, gouging eyes and peeling skin like the lid of a sardine can, stretching bodies, cutting, and seeing parasites feed, drilling holes in skulls. His name had to be revealed, his story slightly exposed, turned into new hues of paint and slathered over the truth, because some realities are too horrific to reveal. Which brings us to this building, and something that the Dexter controversy allows us to do tonight on Ghost Patrol. He pointed above him, then at a place behind the camera as he spoke. Through the years, you have come with us on journeys touching on the supernatural and the criminal, and we have encountered mysteries that stand the scrutiny of even the greatest skeptics. But as I look at this building that locks me in, I see it beginning to rot, to come apart. I know that there is something internally wrong, just like at the BBC. Here we go. I looked at this building as we arrived and thought, who could fix it? Perhaps Jim'll fix it. Hebert's pulse quickened. Shit, Jimmy Seville. Holy shit. Barton was going live on that creep. And if the government can hide and deflect so well about Warden Dexter, he who was hidden for years, falling deeper into the fathoms of fraud, what might they be hiding today? Could that man be tied to a cult and a crazed, mystical, bizarre, parallel Britain? Then Barton did something Hebert had not expected. He reached into his other interior jacket pocket and produced what, through the monitor, looked like a small black notebook. What the government does not want you to know is vast, and what they did not want anyone to know about the warden was that he kept a diary, or to be more precise, notes on his research into these. He glanced at the camera and half-lidded his gaze. Shall we call them experiments? Then he opened the book with one hand, holding the mic with the other, and spreading the dark, leathery cover like the wings of a dead crow. In the upper margin, Dexter added something, which must have been near the end of his dark dabbling into the occult, and it acts as both a preface and endnotes, both exaltation and, to the moral and Christian, a warning. The writing is rough, as if hurried, full of quick scratch-outs and jagged lines, swirls as if created by a too excited hand. And it begins. I've seen things. I have heard things, felt things that deliver the power we desire. By cracking through the barrier, opening the door, I know I now can unleash power undreamed of, all for the glory of Britain and a thirst I long have felt. The procedures were failures over and over, but we were not lacking in subjects. Our meat, our fuel, the lost men of the front, the subjects who already had participated in part of the grand ritual, the death ritual of war, slaughter, body damage, mind modification, sensory disillusion. And when the moment came, and one night, late, my nurses and I, with the manual encounter in the depths of this document, well, we knew. We felt the cold wind of the other infinity, the space with a mind of malevolence. And, well, to use language to explain is nearly impossible. And that's what I've got for transmitter. So you can let me know what you think. Got to do a few fixes there for, of course, Fiction Friday. I hope you liked it. I hope it was fun. Let's check out what's happening there. Hey, Jay. Hello, hello. This is a porno story. No, Jay. And we have Easy as 1, 2, 3. False Stories of Heroism is pretty funny. Yeah. And let's see. Bronk had to leave. Catch you later. Nature Boys chat tomorrow. All right. Knights of the Storm. America Unplugged. Noontime. Knights of the Storm, 2 o'clock. Very good. Sounds good, Guard, says Harry Hart. Might have been talking about the other story. Lots to discuss there. It's 9:30 on the 24th of July. This will probably be turned into its own separate podcast in a week or so. And I hope you've had a fantabulastic night, everybody. Your writing is extremely professional, Guard. Thank you, Birdhouse. Thank you. Wow, coming along indeed. Thanks, Birdhouse. Thank you so much, man. It's been an interesting experiment to see if I can perform at the level I want. And having been so sick, I think it's going okay. It is a lot more work because of what I've experienced, but it's been interesting. And I'm feeling some slight improvements there. I can tell when I'm reading. And so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I should open up another channel with like homeopathic medical remedies and stuff, all the information I've been gathering and gleaning. Not scientific experiments. Don't mind those people I've got hidden in the back in their cages and chains. So I'll hit the road, everyone, and thank you again. Last week of July, remember, if you want to support the show, if you like what we're putting out and you think it's got some value, even a few bucks a month over at the Substack, if you want to become a paid subscriber, that's a great way to contribute. You can always contribute at Rumble. That's a great way to do it. You can become a monthly supporter over there as well. The Substack, you'll get back the news notes over at the Gardner Goldsmith Substack. And if you're just watching on former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel, you can head over there if you want some of my libertarian content. And I've got some poems and things like that also there. We're going to start building some more fiction references and information about writers and things like that as well. So if you want to support us, this is a great way to do it. And we are solely reliant on your support. So if you think you've got something valuable once in a while, hopefully you know the way that this works now in this new paradigm. And hopefully we're giving you something good. We'll give you more writers, take more of your suggestions for movies, music, TV, books, all sorts of things. And I will leave you with the outro for The Outer Limits. My first stop when I got involved with script writing up in Vancouver, not too far from Lynn Canyon, not too far, actually in Burnaby, not too far from where I was living in Burnaby, and right next to the Lougheed Highway. You know where I'm talking about, where Earl's is located and the Bridge Studios is located. So everyone have a great night. We'll have to talk Star Trek again sometime, tell you what that was like on a couple episodes as we develop them. You might enjoy some of that. And we'll tell you about some Outer Limits stuff. Maybe we'll talk to Sand Kings from George R.R. Martin. That was an interesting one that they redid. Quite a story. It's in tons of anthologies. What a great story that one is. So God bless everybody. Have a great night. Thank you for being here. Hope you like what we gave you. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow in the chat for America Unplugged and in the chat for, you got it, Knights of the Storm. Rumble, noontime and 2 p.m. Have a great evening, everybody. God bless.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to The Outer Limits.